the people that Jesus surrounded his life with. And the people that he chose to be around, the people that he influenced. Because either we're one or the other. Either we're influencing or we're being influenced. Right? Either we're influencing others, exerting, behavioral choices and decisions on them, or they're doing it on us. Let me give you two quick stories here today. I'll give you two stories. The story of George and the story of Reuben. First, the story of George was a friend of mine. And George was a funny, charismatic, likable guy that was always looking for a great time. He was so much fun to be around. But there was something in George that he was always bent on getting into trouble. Well, the problem with George is that he was a friend of Jamie, and Jamie liked hanging around George. And when he got into trouble, subsequently, so did I. And George would always get us into trouble, but it was so much fun. I liked hanging around him, and he was cool, and so I wanted to be cool too. This is when I was younger. And so George one day stops by my house, and he's got this new to him anyway, pickup truck. The Chevy pickup truck, and it's got a 350, and it's got no exhaust on it. He comes rumbling up. Whoa. Sounds like it's got a lumpy cam, but it had no exhaust. Here he is rumbling up over front. He picks me up and says, hey, I got some new wheels. I said, let's go out. Let's go for a drive. And so we go for a drive on a nice wintry day, and with the three of us, bench seat, of course. This wasn't much of a pickup truck, but it was cool to us. It was then a 350. So we all pitched in for gas, because that's what you do when you're driving a 350. Everybody pulls out the change and bills, and you fill it up. And we went out driving around, and he comes up with this brilliant idea. And I swear it was George. It wasn't me. And George comes up with this idea. He said, let's go in by the airstrip here, the old airstrip. And he said, what we'll do is we'll run up and down with the truck, and we'll do spin outs and stuff like that. I was like, that would be so cool. Okay, ladies, you can check out. You can take like a little checkout time if you want, but maybe just talk to the guys here for a second, because you probably don't think that that's cool at all. But anyway, it's because it was a snowy day. We go on there, and you find a huge patch of ice. If you drive down it, you hit the icy patch. Doug's having like a flashback, because he probably did this too in his upbringing in Hamilton, but we're not going to go there. But anyways, a huge ice patch. And if you drive, and just before the huge ice patch, you hit it, you can spin the truck around. So George goes first and shows us how to do it, spins the truck around, and I go on, I stand beside and watch. All you see is headlights, taillights, snow's flying up, and comes to a stop, and I was like, that was awesome. So the next guy, Wesley, he climbs in, and he gives it a go, and does it even better. He just blows it, the truck is just spinning around, and comes next to the snow, and it looks awesome because it's going around so fast. Well, then it's my turn, and I'm so pumped up about it. And I know this is hard to believe, that there's something in my head that always wants to outdo everybody else. I know you have a big shock on that, but so I climb in, and I was like, I'm going to back it up all the way. It's that half-ball tire, so back it up all the way down the runway and get a run on it just before the ice patch. I'm going twice as fast as these guys. Crank the wheel. Well, it is impressive. It's going around like this, and I go by George, and he is just like, whoa! Because the truck's spinning around, and we're just like vertigo inside, and I was like, this is pretty cool. And Wes was like, yeah, this is awesome! So we're getting flung to the side. Well, what I didn't take into consideration is that every runway has an ending. So you could see the train coming here. We made it to the end of the runway and went off the end of the runway and rolled the truck about 4 times and totaled this new truck. But that was the story of George, and I'm not relinquishing responsibility that I wasn't behind the wheel, but George definitely, as I think back on it, influenced my life. Why do I just feel like I'm going to get myself into trouble today? Let's move on to the story of Reuben. You all have George stories as well, don't you? Reuben was a friend of mine, very adventurous, a really great guy. He was actually from Denmark, had like a cool, that Danish accent and stuff like that. He was a fun guy, just big as a bear. And one day he contacted me and said, you know what? And this is during the Rwandan war that was going on. There was a civil war during the genocide here. He says, there is a large refugee camp, and I think we can get in, We can take one of those MEF Cessna 410, we can hitch a ride, get right to the refugee camp, and we can go and spend a bit of time there and help out. And I was like, man, I don't know, this is really pushing it, but he made the contacts and worked it out and stuff. We met in Tanzania, and we went on this adventure together that changed the rest of my life. changed the rest of my life. Reuben exerted influence to do something that was just adventurous, even more so, but was absolutely life-changing, to go and to walk in that refugee camp. And that refugee camp in Ngara was on the edge of Rwanda. There were 750,000 people living under UN tents. 750,000. 750,000 people living under tents that have been pushed out because of the war. Many of them were women and children. Most of the children were missing one leg or one arm. As a reprisal to the war between the Hutus and the Tutsis there, they would cut off one arm and one leg and send the children back. And it was horrible. But you know what? It woke up something inside of me that I could never live the same way again. I remember the smells the same as if I was there. This was many, many years ago. And I can still see those children's eyes. You know, as I looked in, they crowded around. We helped with the feeding programs. We spent time with them. Most of them were kids, orphan kids. And we spent time there. Something happened inside of me that changed my life forever. That I can never just go back and just be a teenager or another adult, or just go and live and just accumulate things and live life and retire and plant grass and die. Something changed in my heart. That was one of the moments. And it was because of Reuben. He made it happen. He exerted influence on my life to do something phenomenal. Something seemingly impossible. But you know what? It changed something in me. And as I think back of the two people that were friends in my life, who would I want to have a friend in my life now? Who is it that I would want in to exert influence, to do and to make right decisions? To do things that would benefit mankind, to do things that would change the outcome of people's lives. Maybe you have a Reuben, or maybe you have a George in your life. And I want to encourage you, to choose carefully the people that you surround your life, that who influences you or that you influence others. Mark Twain said, he said, keep away from people who try to belittle your ambitions. Small people always do that. But the really great make you feel that you too can become great. So how did Jesus do it? How did Jesus change the world? When he came, we know the story of how he came as a baby, grew up as a young man. But then at 30 years old, he set out to change the course of history. How did he do it? He didn't have mass marketing campaigns, didn't have Twitter, didn't have a political, entourage with him. But you know what? He started out and he chose a few people. He chose 3 in his inner circle and 12 total to be around him, to pour his life into, that would follow even after his life had finished, that would continue on. With 12 people he picked that would change the world, and what I like reading about, as I kind of dug into them a little bit, the disciples and who they were and where they came from and their backgrounds, I was amazed. I was amazed. Because they were such a diverse group. They're rough, they're uncut, they were just different, they were backwoods, they were redneck, they were all those things that we associate today. But you know what was most amazing? As I read about them, I see us. That if Jesus was here today, would he pick a handful of 12 men from Selkirk, from Haldeman, to gather around him, to pour into their life for 3.5 years, and then they would set the world on fire? It's amazing how far that these 12 men, if you look at the map, I encourage you to go home and Google it. Where the disciples went, they went to India, they went to Syria, they went to Ethiopia. They traveled where people hadn't even traveled, carrying a message of hope and of life, and changed the course of history. Let's watch this video clip and the next one here about Jesus changing the 12 disciples. Because if you look in Luke chapter 6, you get it ready, but just pause it for a second. It says that Jesus went up on the hillside, on the mountainside to pray, and he spent the entire night praying to God. And when morning came, he called his disciples to him, and he chose 12 of them, which he designated apostles. And I'll share the names with them. But what's important about this is I thought he spent all night in prayer. He didn't just roll the dice or pick names out of a straw. Jesus spent time with his heavenly Father and said, God, this is so vitally important. Who are the 12 people that I need to pour my life into? Not the ones that look good, not the ones that just have the charisma or the born leaders or something like that. Help me to choose the 12 people that will change things forever. He spent all night in prayer. That tells me that was pretty important. Hello? When have I spent all night in prayer about beginning or on a relationship with a friend? You know, is this good? Is this helpful? Is this, you know, how do I choose this way? And you know what? He came down from the mountain and he chose 12 people. Let's look at that video clip here for a second and we'll talk about it.